Let's talk about menopause and exercise. Another stage of our woman's journey, equally important that we get right. We want to set our woman up for success through this transitional stage of her journey, but in her later years, and we can start by encouraging them to lift heavy. Resistance training is the best way to generate muscle-making cells, and lifting heavy provides the strength-building stimulus you need as estrogen declines. Heavy lifting is also good for improving fat-burning metabolism, building strong bones, improving posture and stability, and maintaining your cardiovascular health. Let's define heavy lifting though. Heavy lifting is defined as lifting 6 reps or less with as much as we can within those reps. Reserve this for the compound lifts, our squats, deadlift, push, pull. Functional movement patterns. We want to ensure that there is a decent rest period between our sets, minimum 2 minutes, and we always want to make sure that they have 1 to 2 reps in reserve. So, as an example, you would warm your client up in her chosen exercise, whether that is a lower body strength set or an upper body, and you would encourage her to do her 5 reps, as an example, as listed here, working with 1 or 2 reps in reserve to make sure she's getting the right stimulus that she needs to get those strength gains. An alternative might be to do 4 to 6 sets of 3 to 5 reps, where you're obviously going to lift heavier again with those smaller reps, and mindful always of having a couple of reps in reserve. We're never working to failure. Ensure that these heavy lifting sets are compound muscle groups, which we said before. They are mimicking functional everyday exercises that they are going to be doing in their everyday life. Another way that we can get our strength gains if we don't have access to very heavy weights is by playing around with tempo. That could be done by moving through a squat slowly, adding a pause, and then coming out of that squat with some power. And that is a nice way to add a little bit of spice to that heavy lifting set if we don't have excess weights to use. We also want to find power in sprint interval training. We need the benefits of improved insulin sensitivity, stronger mitochondria, improved fat burning, especially that deep visceral fat. We want to see a reduction of cortisol and lower stress levels overall, and all of this comes with sprint intervals. There are a few examples here. It could be a Tabata set where you are working your client 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off for 6 to 8 sets, allowing a rest and maybe repeating depending on their fitness levels. It could be 30 seconds of work, 30 seconds rest for 4 to 6 sets, repeat, reset. Or maybe 40 seconds of work, 20 seconds of rest, depending on your program, timesing it by 10 sets. As always, we are ensuring our clients are properly warmed up, but the key here is intensity. We want to work at around 8 to 9 out of 10 of their rate of perceived effort. And we want to build our sets over time with an awareness of their energy levels and the recovery in between. Getting the stimulus right is really important. And it is different from our high intensity training with those really short, sharp bursts of high intensity movement. As with all of our other stages of a woman's journey, we need to be aware of their pelvic floor and their core muscles. We've learnt about the importance of strengthening the pelvic floor and transverse abdominis through the postnatal stages, as well as through pregnancy and beyond into perimenopause, menopause, and further. We also know that we need to follow the guidance of a pelvic health physio if needed. There are ways that we can progress our clients with a pelvic floor or a transverse activation, and that could be in the position, such as supine, tabletop, or standing, or it could be adding load in the form of movement, such as hands pressing together through a pelvic floor or a transverse activation, a knee dropout or a leg extension, all of these getting harder each time. But we must be aware of our connection to pelvic floor when lifting heavy specifically. The obvious being in squats, but also in our other movements like pull-ups or a tricep extension and press-ups, making sure that our clients have a connection to pelvic floor and their core activation, and that they are aware of any symptoms so that we can then modify our workout accordingly. I wanted to run you through a case study. Let's say you have a client that you're working with who is 48 years old. She has 3 kids and she's working a full-time job in logistics. She's currently experiencing several symptoms of perimenopause, such as night sweats and insomnia, irregular periods, brain fog. She has a prolapse that she is confident navigating with exercise, and a more recent shoulder niggle that just doesn't seem to go away. So we have a few things that we need to look after with this client. I want to talk you through an overview of a training session with her that caters to the strength training components, the sprint interval training, and it has an awareness of these contraindications that we're working with. We would have a slow start to her session, making sure that we're checking in with her energy levels. Has she slept? How is her body feeling? And from there, we would then lead in with our core breath work and adding in a pelvic floor awareness so that she is conscious of it through her training session. We could do some accessory work initially to just navigate that shoulder injury, just setting her up for success on all grounds before we move into some of the heavier, faster moving parts of the workout. For her strength set, I've chosen a narrow back squat, which is going to support the prolapse, keeping a narrower stance. I know that we're working 5 sets of 5, working once again to 2 reps in reserve. So I'm going to build a heavy set up for her, encouraging her to check on her pelvic floor throughout. She's great at managing it, so I know she will be fine and able to tell me if something doesn't feel right in terms of a heaviness or an uncomfortable feeling through the pelvic floor. I'm countering that with a seated row. Again, 5 sets of 5 where I'm building across those 5 sets and finishing with 2 reps in reserve to make sure that we're getting the right stimulus, nice and heavy. For her cardio conditioning, I'm going to put in some step-ups, tricep press-ups with a quick check on her pelvic floor in the bottom position of that press-up to make sure that that's okay, as well as checking in on her shoulder. And then I'm going to add a weighted walk in there with a kettlebell, something that's going to get her moving, but also it's functional with a connection through to her core. From here, if her energy levels are still looking good. We're going to finish with some interval training, 20 seconds on the Airdyne, 10-second rest, 6 rounds. It's really important that we finish our session with a stretch, obviously, but I'm also going to put in a moment of mindfulness and some breath connection to bring her back into her body, drop her cortisol levels and get her checking back in with how she's feeling, ensuring that she leaves feeling better for it. You will notice that with this whole workout, all of the movements are functional. There is an awareness of her contraindications, and if she comes in with lower energy, a lack of sleep, high stress levels, this whole workout would need to be adapted to ensure that her needs on that day at that time are catered for. A few things for you to think about to see how we can do better as personal trainers to ensure that our women clients do better also. Meet your clients where they are, encouraging them to tune into their body, their energy levels, and adapt your session accordingly to ensure that they feel better for training with you. If they have a night with little sleep, ease into the session. Build intensity to see if they can cope with it and factor in a really restorative finish, as mentioned before. If their shoulders and knees are feeling niggly, that we know can happen through this transitional stage of a woman's journey, set them up for success. Give them accessory work first to support joints before getting them to lift heavy. Remember, we can work around contraindications, providing alternative exercises that replicate the same movement patterns without compromise. And we should be doing this for our clients every time. If stress levels are high, encourage a connection with breath and a moment of mindfulness. Encourage them to move intuitively. What do they need? What do they feel? And how can they get the best workout for themselves on that day? Educate your clients around these key points and empower them to make the choices that will leave them feeling better for it. Something for you to keep in mind. What you are doing with your perimenopause, menopause clients is setting them up for their next decades moving forward.